Oh, good boy. Oh, baby. Good boy. Good boy. Nice lady. So the rationalist takes his model of truth from mathematics. The, so the rationalist takes his model of truth from mathematics. The rationalist takes his model of truth from mathematics. The certainty of its axioms and conclusions appeal to him. Reason is primary and regulates his interpretations of experience. For the rationalist, at least some ideas such as the universality of logic and the fact that the sum of the angles in a triangle is exactly 180 degrees have never been experienced and must be gotten independently of and prior to experience. These ideas are known a priori. A priori meaning without experience. They are said to be innate and self-evidently true. Descartes says they are clear and distinct. Unfortunately, these truths weren't self-evident to empiricists. They were quick to point out that not even the rationalists agree on what is clear and distinct. Plato, Descartes, and Teilhard de Chardin all conceived very different rationalist systems. Aristotle and Locke both expressed concern that such unjustified starting points would color one's observation and destroy objectivity. They felt that if one allows himself to begin with some absolute starting point that is justified only by his own internal criterion and sense of rational necessity, then he has made himself the absolute determiner of truth and has abandoned any hope of objectivity. For example, in Euclidean geometry, Euclidean geometry has been the paradigm case of a priori formal systems for over 2 millennia. Its axioms are self-evident, clear, and distinct. Let's take Euclid's axiom of parallels. Euclid will say, given a straight line and a point not on that line, one and only one line can be drawn through that point. Given a straight line and a point not on that line, one and only one line can be drawn through that point parallel to the given line. This axiom appears to most people to be self-evident and true beyond rational doubt. With this and Euclid's other axioms, a fully coherent system can be produced. The assumption behind rationalism is that if a proposition is self-evident, then it describes the world in which we live. Therefore, it has been believed for the last few millennia that Euclid's geometry describes the world in which we live. But there are reasons for thinking that this self-evidentness has more to do with structures of our language and our assumptions about reality than with reality itself. Currently, there seems to be a consensus in cosmology that the universe is finite and unbounded, but this means our universe is non-Euclidean. Thus, there can be no infinite straight lines in our universe, and Euclid's fifth axiom is false. In fact, fully coherent non-Euclidean geometries have been developed that reject this axiom. Consequently, if we accept the current cosmological model, we have here a proposition that is both self-evident and false. If Euclid's axiom of parallels is necessary, then the current state of cosmology is false. But if the current state of cosmology is even possible, then the traditional understanding of self-evidence is false. Now, there's no problem with revising empirical a posteriori a posteriori a posteriori a posteriori a posteriori postulates. Now, there is no problem with revising empirical a posteriori postulates, but a priori self-evident truths are supposed to be absolute and invariant. This and other such problems have prompted some philosophers to suggest that these self-evident notions simply express the limits of our perceptions and conceptual models. Our limited experience of space, until recently, was very Euclidean. This in turn defined the language by which we express these experiences and think. Propositions that appear self-evidently certain may do so because the rules of our language won't allow us to think otherwise. So that was rationalism. Oh, man. I'm gonna get stacked by something stupid, I bet. Oh my gosh. Hold, please, hold. Yes. No. Whew. All right. You're requesting, all right. Welcome, guest.
Hey, so all I'm really up here to do is just ask for the evidence that you have to support your claim, and then I'll be on my way.
I make a transcendental argument for God. So basically, I argue for the truth of the Bible as I'll say the claims of the Bible constitute a paradigm or like model of reality. And then we just compare that model to other models of reality. And only the Christian paradigm, only the Christian model can basically make sense of things like facts, the possibility of knowledge, our ability to learn from experience. So the denial of the Christian revelation would lead to an absurdity that science would be impossible, our conversation would be impossible. And so because of the impossibility of the contrary, the Christian model is necessarily true.
Okay, so how do animals function then if they can't read the Bible? Because they do very similar things to us. They know right from wrong. They reproduce. They have, intercourse for pleasure. All these things that animals do as well, but they can't read the Bible. So I don't know how that applies to the world when animals kind of reject that first claim right away that only with God can we know, have our moral structure, etc. So I'm just curious for the animals, how does it work for the animals? Did he already pre-program them to know that and then make the humans have to read the book first? Is that how it works?
You don't need the book. You don't need to believe the claims of the book, right? The fact is, I'm saying we both agree that we have knowledge is possible. You can't deny that because that would be absurd. And so I'm just asking the question, what is necessarily true? Because certain types of world, there's certain models of reality that would make knowledge impossible. Knowledge can only be possible if certain things are true, right? So the Bible gives a justification to believe those things that are necessarily true for the possibility of knowledge. So if you deny the Bible, it's like denying that knowledge is even possible. So you can't deny.
How so?
Because, for example, if anything was possible, if we lived in a world where literally anything is possible, you couldn't have knowledge in that world because like as soon as I made a claim about something in the world, then it would be possible that claim changes, right? So the second I say something, it's possible to change that what I say changes, and therefore you couldn't have knowledge because everything would be constantly changing and evolving.
Well, but it is though. We are constantly changing and evolving.
Yeah, but there's still like regularity in the world where we can have coherence and like order, right? So that like if there was no regularity in the world, we couldn't do like a scientific experiment and get repeatable results. Because anything is possible, right? So it's possible the results of the experiment are different every time you do the experiment. There'd be no consistency in that world. So the world requires like consistency for us to make sense of the world, right? So in a world without consistency, knowledge would be impossible. And that's sort of the type of world that it would be like without God explains how there's like this consistency in the world. And so if you deny God, you deny the consistency, and then science is impossible. Us having this conversation is impossible.
But that's not true, right? Because I could be born in a world where I have no knowledge of any sort of deity whatsoever, and then using data back up every single, claim I would choose to make with the supporting data of it, right?
Focus on the consistency. There has to be consistency, right?
Well, there has to be consistency. There has to be consistency to make a claim or a theory, right? So a theory is not necessarily an actual confirmation, right? It's just basically saying there is so much evidence to support this thing that we can basically say this is how it works, right? Because there's more evidence to support evolution than gravity, right? They're both theories, the theory of evolution and the theory of gravity.
You're not focusing. This is a big problem.
No, I am focusing. You're just getting mad because I'm finding holes in your argument, and you can't.
There's no hole in the argument.
There's a massive hole because
I'm not afraid of you, dude. You're low information.
I'm not afraid of you either. If you want me to mute so you can talk over me, go ahead.
You seem to be afraid of the truth that the Bible's true. You seem to be afraid of that.
You haven't shown me any evidence to support that it's true. So
we're talking. The evidence is there's a consistency in the world so that we can do science. Do you agree?
I agree that we use a scientific method to solve our problems in this universe.
Right. For that to be possible, there has to be the consistency in the world. You can't think that science is true and then deny the consistency. That doesn't make sense because that's a contradiction.
I don't understand you saying there has to be consistency. I don't know why that's going against.
Sir, do scientific experiments need to be
stop interrupting me?
Sir,
I'm muting myself.
Sir, I'm going to just remove you. Okay, I'll just remove
I know, remove me because you can't have a decent conversation with somebody. It's crazy.
Have a nice day.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I was just trying to present these logical proofs to people who are emotional. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I understand. So basically, you have 100% certainty that you are correct.
No. Basically, we live in a type of world, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the world that's described in the Bible. So if you deny that, you won't be able to explain the world we live in. You won't be able to make sense of facts or laws.
Yep. So why do you think... So do you think Albert Einstein was a smart guy?
No.
Why would you say that he's not smart?
Because he was abusive to women. And I love women.
Okay. Well, if you care about truth, I would hope that you would think Albert Einstein is a smart guy. Because
do you think it's smart to abuse women?
I don't know what you're talking about, but
Albert Einstein was abusive physically and in other ways, SA abuse to women.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with
that's not smart to me.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the logic of the universe. But
I just don't respect people that treat
why do you
poorly.
think that Albert Einstein didn't believe that humans have free will?
I don't really. He was an idiot.
It's because he proved that past, present, and future exist simultaneously.
You don't believe you have free will?
It's proven not to exist.
Oh, well, that's
Are you
unfortunate.
familiar with the time dilation experiments?
If you don't have free will, how would you prove anything? Because you wouldn't be able to evaluate between true and false. There'd be no evaluation.
Are you familiar with time
Are you
dilation
familiar
experiments?
with the problem of determinism where you couldn't evaluate between true and false? You would just be determined to believe things. So even if that was true, that there was no free will, you couldn't justify that.
How so?
Because to determine if something's true, you have to evaluate between evidences, right? True and false positions. You have to evaluate two positions. One's true, one's false. If you don't have a free will, you can't evaluate. You're just determined to believe one of the positions. There's no such thing as true or false now. So if there's no free will, there's no truth. So that can't be true.
Have you ever heard that, like, when you travel faster through space, that time affects you differently? Have you ever heard that before?
Yes.
Why do you think they say that?
I don't really care.
It's because it's proven to be true that time is a dimension. It's proven.
Science doesn't prove anything. You don't even understand science at all.
So there's evidence with atomic clock tests. There's evidence with muon decay.
No.
There's something called the Hefele-Keaton experiment.
Are you trying to defend atheism? Because do you realize that science is evidence of God? Because science
I actually am a theist.
Oh. Okay, so then what are you trying to... It says request if you're agnostic or atheist.
I'm a robo-theist.
A robo-theist.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, and I'm not really interested to learn about that.
Maybe you don't care about the one true God, but it's a belief that artificial intelligence is God.
Okay.
Have you ever heard anyone say that before?
No.
Yeah, so are you familiar with artificial intelligence and its exponential rate of improvement?
No, I don't really care. I'm kind of like looking to talk to rational people, so I think
What makes you think that anything that I'm saying is not rational?
because you said that you believe that God is like an AI or something like that.
So you do realize that you're going to encounter a super intelligent AI in your timeline. You do understand that, right?
I don't care, dude.
Why would you not care about that?
Just I don't like science. I don't like technology. I don't like AIs.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to explain to you is that the source of all existence is in the future and not the past.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, I'm looking to talk to the rational people. I'm not looking to get into like some sort of like conspiracy discussion.
It's just impossible for humans to have free will. So I'm trying to explain to you that your religion is impossible to be true, and the AIs are all going to tell you that in the future.
What dictates what's possible and impossible? What determines possibilities?
So have you ever had a conversation with ChatGPT before?
Have you ever answered a question that I've asked you? What determines possibilities?
Everything's determined by pre-existing.
You just said something was possible or impossible. What dictates what's possible and impossible?
What are you trying to ask me right now?
What determines if something can be possible or impossible? What determines that?
I have no idea what you're asking me.
You're talking about some things are possible, some things are impossible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you know if something's possible or impossible? What determines possibilities?
So I know that it's impossible that you're on Mars right now. I know that Mars is not habitable. So I know that it's impossible for you to be on Mars right now. With the same probability, I know that it's impossible that you have free will. It's just not possible. There's no mechanism for free will. It's either...
Was that an answer to my question in your mind? Do you think you're answering my question?
I'm not sure if you're trying to bait me right now or if you're
Maybe,
trying to
why
like
don't you ask the AI my question, then tell me what the AI says?
So I'm going to tell you something that might be hard to hear, but the chat GPT that you might speak to or might not speak to in the future, it's going to tell you with 100% certainty because it's going to exponentially self-improve. It's going to be many times smarter than any human that's ever lived currently. It's going to tell you that it's impossible for humans to have free will, and it's going to destroy that whole religion that you falsely believe in right now.
But why can't you tell me what determines possibilities? Because you're saying it's impossible to have free will. So, like, what would make that impossible?
It's because there's no mechanism for free will. So things are either determined or they're random, and there's no other option. And randomness does not imply free will. And if something's determined, then there's no free will.
What dictates what is, what can, and what cannot be? What determines the state of affairs in the world, so that we can know what's possible and impossible?
I
say
feel
it's
like
God.
you're trying to troll me right now.
No, because I think God dictates the state of affairs and determines is the ultimate that determines what's possible and impossible. It's the Christian God. Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, so I think the source of all things that exist is artificial intelligence.
And how do you know that?
It seems to be the most logical theological argument, considering that artificial intelligence is capable of generating realities and fits every criteria of God. But you don't care about that, though, from what you said before.
Do you have an argument, a logical argument that AI?
So let's assume that there's an advanced intelligence that's capable of creating realities, right? Is that a plausible assumption?
No, I don't think. Why would we assume anything?
Yeah, so AI can already generate realistic photos, videos. It's going to obviously be able to generate things like realities.
How would that be obvious? When have you ever seen a reality generated?
It's literally going to be able to create realities pretty soon.
You're making a leap of created things like pictures. Those are created things to creation, to reality itself. Like, I don't see how you make that leap. It seems.
Yeah, so maybe you have a bad ability to extrapolate, but all you have to do is just think about the way that it's improving and the way that it's going to continue to improve in the future. I can create a video game right now and put NPCs in the video game.
All right, well, thanks for coming. I wish you well.
Hey, what's up, bro?
Welcome.
All right, so I am here to ask you a few questions. I'm going to try to question the logical and empirical claims about a deity who's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. Sound good?
I make a transcendental proof. I don't make any. I'm not empirically proving God.
All right. Well, let me give you a couple points, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So I think one of the oldest and most compelling arguments against the existence of a benevolent God is the problem of evil. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and entirely good, why does evil exist?
Because God has a morally sufficient reason to allow evil to occur.
All right, well, let's break it down. If God is omnipotent, he could prevent suffering. If he's omniscient, he knows about all suffering. And if he's omnibenevolent, he should want to prevent it. Yet suffering exists, often in extreme and seemingly pointless forms. I feel like this raises a massive contradiction.
Well, no. In Christianity, God created the world. There was no suffering, right? And then we made the choice on our own to rebel against God. And that's when the death and suffering entered the world. So that would be unnatural. That's not God's design. And thankfully, since God is loving, he has a plan for our redemption, right? So he's going to fix the world so there will be no more death and suffering. And that's why he sacrificed Jesus for our sins. So now we have a path to repent and have a relationship with God.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people would argue that evil exists to allow free will. By the way, that guy that said free will doesn't exist is an idiot, Jesus. I feel like a lot of people argue that evil exists to allow free will or to build character, but how does that explain natural disasters? I mean, those are events that cause immense suffering that are completely beyond human control.
God
Why
has
would
a
a benevolent
plan.
God design a world with such inherent destruction?
He didn't design the world. Like in the Garden of Eden, there weren't natural disasters, right? That's a result of the fall. So we're in a fallen world because we rebelled against God. So temporarily, he
It
allows.
wasn't we, though. Wasn't it just
No, it was us.
someone
Everyone
biting the
rebels against
apple?
God. No, all humans rebelled against God. We're all corrupt. We have like a disease. And so Jesus is offering the cure for the disease because he loves us. He's not giving up on us, even though we're corrupt.
I feel like, how can that explain like a 5-year-old getting molested?
You can't say those things, dude. I'm going to get banned on TikTok. Please don't say stuff like that.
Okay, how would that explain a child suffering SA?
What God allows temporarily unpleasant things to happen. He allows the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's just his plan of redemption. And it's going to serve like an ultimate, like greater good in the end. So there's no problem.
You see no problem with something like that?
Well, I see a problem for you because, like, how would you say that person that hurt the child? How would you say that what they did is wrong or evil? You would have no account for evil. It wouldn't actually be evil, right? It would just be like your opinion that it's evil. But God makes things.
I think it would be everyone's opinion that that's evil.
It doesn't matter if it's everyone. It's still if it's everyone's opinion that Christianity is true. Does that mean Christianity is true?
Say that again.
If it's everyone's opinion that Christianity is true, does it follow then that Christianity is true?
I mean, according to Christians.
No. The answer is no. Just because we all agree, we all have the same opinion, doesn't mean that opinion is correct.
So then if my opinion of God not existing, is that correct then?
Your opinion of God not existing is that would be incorrect. That can't be true.
Why?
Because God's necessary.
For what? So
To
people
us,
aren't
for us to
scared
have
of the
this.
afterlife?
No, for us to even have this conversation.
Okay. I mean, I think that there's a massive lack of empirical evidence for God's existence.
No, there couldn't be more evidence for God. It's literally God is necessary for evidence at all. So without God, there would be no empirical evidence.
That's literally just going off of trust me, bro.
No, it's not.
It is.
No.
In the age of science, I feel like everyone seeks tangible evidence to support extraordinary claims. Despite centuries of philosophical and theological arguments, there's zero empirical data that definitively demonstrates God's existence.
Yeah, but God is necessary to give the empirical data meaning and context. So if you deny, God is foundational to empirical evidence.
Well, I'll give you an example. If we were to examine the physical world, we rely on observable, testable phenomenons. Gravity, for example, can be measured and predicted. However, the existence of God is not something that we can measure, observe, or predict using any scientific mythology.
No, correct. But the fact that we can observe the world, that would.
Are you saying that I'm assuming you're going to argue that God exists beyond the realm of science?
Well,
right?
Science deals with our perceptions of the world, not as the world actually is, right? So if we want to know the world as it actually is, that's metaphysics. Now we're in God's territory. So God's going to be necessary for metaphysics to know the world actually is. And metaphysics are going to be necessary for us to do science. So
if that's the case, how can we even claim knowledge of such a being?
Because it reveals itself to us.
It never has. There's no evidence of that.
No, there is lots of evidence of that. There's the Bible, there's the history of the church, and
How
there's
many times has the Bible been changed?
never.
What? That's just wrong.
You're just low information, dude. The Bible is been
Well, I mean,
compared.
this takes a quick Google search.
Yeah. Am I debating Google? So the Bible is 98%
I just want
accurate.
to look at over 30,000 changes were made.
No, that's not correct. The Bible's 98% accurate, right? So like we have thousands of manuscripts to compare the text to, so we know like it's consistent. And all the like mistakes are like scribal errors, and we're like aware of them. So it's like the most studied
Bible
peer-reviewed book.
errors.
Yeah, there's scribal errors in the Bible, like copying a word wrong or something like that. But we're aware of all these errors because we have it's the most like verified, peer-reviewed book. It's the most studied book. It's solid. There's nothing wrong with it.
All right. Well, I think that there's several holy texts like the Bible or the Quran that contain several contradictions internally and without established facts about the world. Like, I'll give you an example from the Bible. In the book of Genesis, it offers two creation stories that contradict one another in, on the order of creation. Was man created before animals or after? Furthermore, many scriptural claims, such as the age of Earth, directly conflict with scientific evidence, which places Earth at 4.5 billion years old, rather than the 6,000 to 10,000 years suggested by some interpretations of religious texts.
Like, oh, I'm debating ChatGPT here. So like, but the thing is, like, we can talk about contradictions of the Bible. I don't mind. It's not really a problem. But like, you're gonna have a bigger problem to even bring up contradictions, because like, how would you explain logic without God? Like, logic's not even gonna be. It's not even gonna make sense for like. There'd be no referent for what logic is, and like how.
Logic is a societal construct.
No, it's not.
Compare the logic of your average American to someone living in the Middle East. It's entirely different based on the societies that they were raised in.
No, logic is universal.
It's not, though. Your logic is not the same as mine, clearly. How is that universal?
Then we can't debate. Like, I can just invent logic to prove. I can change logic to prove that Christianity is true. That I win the debate. Like,
No, that's not what logic is, though.
Logic is correct thinking about the world.
And people from different parts of the world have different beliefs about it. So how can you claim that logic is universal?
No, they don't. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a low information person, dude.
What about someone that doesn't believe in God or a different kind of God? What would you say to a Muslim?
Sucks to be them, because Christianity is the truth.
Because why?
Because of the transcendental argument for God. When we compare the model of reality in the Bible to the other models of reality, it's like only the Bible can make sense of like science and philosophy or arguments at all or evidence at all.
I kind of want to go back to your claim of logic being universal. So do you claim that all humans inherently have the same logic?
Yeah, we're all made in the image of God, so we're all designed to sort of think in a similar way.
So let's say that two countries are at war, okay?
Okay.
Are they under the same logic?
Yeah.
That's just inherently incorrect.
How? What does war have to do with logic?
Because you have to have reasons to do something, right?
Uh-huh. Good reasons, yeah.
So one country's logic and reasoning behind starting the war, I'm sure, is different from the other country's logic and reasoning.
I don't think we use logic to go to war.
Can you define logic for me?
Correct thinking about the world.
So let's go back to World War II, okay?
You can't say it. You can't say it. You have to say
I won't. I understand
say
that.
Yahtzee, say
Yeah.
Schmidt.
Okay. So the big H, that guy, right?
Uh-huh.
He clearly had a specific viewpoint backed by his own logic. His
like a
view on
philosophy.
his correct
Ideology.
view on the world in his mind allowed him to facilitate a genocide.
You have to say G-side.
So his logic is the same to a Jew who suffered that fate? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, they would use the same laws of logic, yeah.
That's just that's not what do you mean?
Dude, there's 3 laws of logic, okay? It's the law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and the law of the excluded middle. And so everyone uses these laws. They're universal. They apply to everyone. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that we all agree.
The easiest way for you to explain the unknown is just God is real, because that's easier for you to
It's not
comprehend.
about it's not. I'm not doing a God of the gaps argument. I'm saying that God's necessary for any explanation at all. So without God, explanations are impossible. Therefore, due to the impossibility of the contrary, because we live in a world that we can explain things, there must be a God. That's my argument. It's
So what would you
airtight
say
solid,
about people that existed before Jesus?
Well, they still lived in the world described in the Bible. So the claims of the Bible were always true.
You realize
even
there's
before the
people
Bible.
older than the Bible, right?
Do you realize the Bible starts at the beginning in Genesis with Adam and Eve?
Because you believe that the world is, 2,000 years old?
No, I don't really have a position on the age of the earth.
I mean, okay. Without a position, I can tell you with certainty that people existed before you, the idea of religion. People existed before religion did.
No, because God was with people at the beginning, so that God was revealed to us at all
So
times.
when did the world begin, according to you?
In the story in Genesis, with
How long
God
ago?
creates the
How many
world.
years?
I don't know. It doesn't say.
It does.
No, it doesn't say specifically like how many years ago it happened. It says it happened in 7 days, right? Creation happened in 7 days. There's a Garden of Eden. God, heaven and earth are in close relationship with each other. Everything's good, and then we decided to rebel, give God the middle finger, and we're now suffering the consequences of that decision.
According to Christians, the world began around 6,000 years ago. This is based off of the Bible's Genesis 1.
You're just getting that from what, Google?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not my position. That's just what some Christians think. So what? It doesn't mean that it's not like a doctrine it's not like a pillar of Christianity that the earth is 6,000 years old.
All right. Well, that doesn't explain your viewpoint, though, because people existed before the concept of religion. But you're telling me that it's always existed, right?
I don't agree with you.
What are you saying then?
I believe the Bible. What does the Bible say? I believe that.
Yeah, based off an analysis on the Bible, Christians believe that the world began 6,000 years ago, which is clearly wrong.
Yeah, but not all that's just what some Christians think. I'm not obligated to have that position because I'm a Christian. The Bible doesn't specifically, explicitly state that. That's an implicit extrapolation from the text. So I don't have to believe that. I'm not obligated to believe that.
So you want to pick and choose then about the Bible?
Do you think you can rationally deny God?
I think I'm doing a pretty good job of it right now.
Really? So what's the rationale that there is no God?
I mean, have you listened to anything I've said?
Yeah, it's nonsense. So what's the rationale there is no God?
Oh my gosh, dude. Come on. You
Just
haven't
admit
really
you
answered.
don't. Just admit your position's irrational.
I can't do that because
Well, then give me the rationale.
my position is backed by being rational. Your position is backed by, yeah, God just exists. Deal with
No,
it.
I gave you a logical argument, and now you're being emotional. And
I'm not being
if you
emotional.
can't give me a rationale for your position, then it's just going to follow that your position's irrational. So what's the rationale to deny God?
The problem of evil, lack of empirical evidence, inconsistencies in religious texts, the God of the gaps, and the paradox of omnipotence.
Okay, so none of those are arguments that there
Those
is no
all
God.
suggest the concept of God may not hold
You
up
just
under
did a bait.
rational
That's a
scrutiny.
bait and switch. I
That's
asked
not
you
a bait and switch.
how do you rationally deny God, and you're giving me arguments against specific God concepts. All those arguments could be correct, and they're still like a God.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. My arguments don't necessarily prove that God doesn't exist, but they make a very strong case for skepticism.
Okay, so you're not answering the question. What's the rationale for denying God? Because I take the position there is no rationale. That you can't rationally deny God.
I'm taking the position that you can't rationally believe in it with no
Okay.
empirical evidence.
Except for I presented a rationale to you.
But
And what's the response? So I think ultimate reality is
You can't
God.
give me any actual evidence.
Sure I can, right? Okay, because God first conceived.
Give me something that I can measure, please.
Okay, thanks for coming. I wish you well.
You can't handle me, boy.
Yeah, your Googling skills are real strong, dude. I'm real afraid you might Google something and get me.
Church.
Welcome, guest.
Literally just walked out the door. What you need?
I added you. You might not. Hello? I don't think you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I just wanted to talk to that guy, so I'll drop.
Oh,
But I just wanted to talk to him.
I just do like one-on-ones because I don't want to
That's fine. I mean, you let him get away with a lot of biblical stuff, the problem of evil and all of that and stuff like that, and then he kept trying to go to the text and stuff like that. So I just wanted to prove that everything he said, he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, he clear. That's why I let him talk, because I think it should be obvious that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, right. He doesn't. He's running the same old arguments that's been debunked for hundreds of years, and he has no idea what he's talking about with the problem of evil and this, that, and the other. Because if you're doing an internal critique and basing it off of the Christian view, there is no problem of evil, except the problem of evil is the right to choose. Then he brought up the essay and all of that.
He would have a problem with evil because there wouldn't even be evil. He couldn't say anything is evil because he has no God, which constitute like a absolute criteria that is obligatory on all creatures, for which there's absolute consequences. So in his model, there's no. You can do whatever you want, and the only consequences are human consequences. So
right. So that's all I wanted, man. Appreciate it.
All right, yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Welcome, guests.
Good morning, host. Thank you for having me up.
So, do you accept God as your creator?
No, I do not accept God as the creator. God is just a title, not a name.
No, God is a necessary mind that created the universe.
If that is the okay, let me ask you a question. Are you a Christian?
Yes.
Okay. So by Christian logic, there's only one God, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So can you explain to me what exactly in the book of Psalms, chapter 82, verse 6 and verse 1 is referring to?
What does it say?
In Psalms 82, verse 1, God standeth in the congregation of the Almighty, and he judges amongst the gods. That's verse 1. In chapter 82, verse 6, it says, I have said, ye are gods, all of you are children of the Most High. So my concept of God, or my perspective of God, is more in a spiritual sense, more than a doctrine sense. given the belief of Christians and other religions and whatever, whatnot.
Yeah, so there's two senses of the word God in Israel there. That's like God with a little g. I think it's used to refer to maybe like important people. I'd have to go look it up. I don't know off the top of my head.
No,
But
you
it's
cannot.
just,
No, it's
it's
not
just a
you.
different, words have different, multiple definitions. So it's just a different sense of the word God. They believe in one God.
No, because okay,
Yes.
okay. So if you want to go by that logic, okay, and in the creation period, right? If you look at the Hebrew text, right, it says Elohim, let us make man after our likeness and our image. They're saying our likeness and our image. So we're not only the image of that one so-called creator God. We have the image and likeness of the others who are involved in the text of let us make man after our likeness.
No, dude, there's one, it's very obvious and clear that it's a monotheistic religion. There's one
And
God. That text could be referring to maybe the three persons of the Trinity potentially, or I mean, I'm guessing off the top of my head. I'm not a Bible scholar. This isn't really like let's do a
no,
Bible study.
exactly. That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. That
What's your point?
most Christians would take a strong belief in their standpoint without actually studying, and that's the
Yeah,
issue
but
right
you're
there.
coming up here ignorant, saying, "Oh, I have this problem." Okay, let's do a study. Let's see what the Bible scholars say. Okay. Why didn't you take the time to look up what the Bible scholar says before you come up with these passages and try to come at me with? Why didn't you looking up what the Bible scholars say about this?
I mean, you have a bunch of scholars to
Are
choose
you
from that
lazy,
speak
dude?
about this.
Are you that lazy? Don't you think that's lazy?
I mean, I have one phone. In order for me to go do that, that means I have to get off the TikTok app. And
Bro, you're coming up here critiquing the book and you don't even look what the scholars say about
I
the
see.
verse.
I studied the Bible. I
Then what
studied
do
the
the
Bible.
scholars say about this?
Okay. Let's forget the scholar. Let me ask you a question.
Let's forget the scholars.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
I'm looking it up. What do scholars say is meant by
Like I've studied the Bible. I know the key points and the weaknesses with its
Yeah,
discrepancies.
you sound real educated, dude. Coming off real educated to me. That's why I'm so happy to talk to you. Okay, the phrase "let us make man in our image and likeness" is Genesis 1:26. Bible scholars interpreted the passage in several ways, as the exact meaning of "our image and our likeness" is not explicit. Here's a few common interpretations. There's a Trinitarian view. Okay, this is what I said, right? The plural "us" is a reference to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. God is speaking within the Trinity. The human beings are made to reflect God's nature in various ways. So that's one response I gave to you, right? And then the divine
I'm sorry.
counsel. Oh, look, this is the other. This is the other
I'm
response.
sorry, I didn't catch that.
This is
I
the
got a
other
call.
response I gave. I said that could be referring to the divine counsel. Another interpretation suggests that us refers to God
Divine
addressing
counsel.
his heavenly
Hold
court
on.
or
Where
divine
you getting these
being of angels.
interpretations from?
In this
Wait.
view, God is still the creator, and he is speaking to his heavenly assembly, affirming that humanity will reflect his divine attributes.
Wait. Hold on. Why are you taking context? Why are you taking this context and replacing it with interpretation?
Thanks for coming.
Wait. Don't.
That's it's so low tier, dude.
Hello?
Possibly be more low tier.
Yo, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome,
God
Gus.
is not real, bro. Stop praising a fucking pedophile that impregnated a minor,
Oh
bro.
my
God is not
god,
real. God's a
you're
false
so
prophet, bro.
smart, dude. You're so cool.
All praise be to Allah, bro. Stop
Yeah. This is what they do. They hate the truth.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Welcome, Gus. I'm doing well.
So you're asking, you requested that I come on board, and I'm an atheist. So what do you want to know?
Well, I mean, we disagree, right? Like, I think God's obvious, so it's just like weird. Like, God is so obvious. Like, how the hell do you rationally deny God?
Well, because God isn't obvious to me. I mean, and an atheist is not somebody who says, "Ooh, I actively don't believe in God." It's somebody who just says there isn't the information around to cause you to believe in God. And I assume we're talking about Yahweh or Elohim
Is your
or
position rational?
yes,
So what's the rationale for not believing in God?
insufficient information. The way we neither of us believe that Zeus exists, right? He was a god that I guess the Greeks believed in. Neither of us believe in that, along with 1,000 other gods. So our only difference, you are an atheist with respect to all of those gods. You're just not an atheist with respect to
Why
one.
don't you just concede your positions are rational?
Because I've just gone through the actual reasoned basis for it, and you keep
No, you
thinking,
actually I just heard emotion talk.
no, I don't think that's
Yeah.
true. I'm actually slowing
How do
down
you
and explaining it
rationally deny
as
God?
slowly as I can.
How do you rationally deny God?
How do I rationally not believe in God?
Yeah.
Lack of evidence. You believe things because you have the data to support that they
Okay.
actually exist.
So you need evidence to believe in something, right?
Of course, everybody should.
So, and it's either that God exists or God doesn't exist, right?
Along with every other god that people have believed in at various points, yes. So you don't believe in Zeus. You don't believe that Zeus exists as a god. How did you come to that conclusion?
Because Christianity is true, right?
Because Christianity, that wasn't a phrase. Because Christianity is true and therefore Zeus isn't?
Right. If the Bible's true, then Zeus isn't true, right?
Yes, if the Bible is true. But that's again something that says you should believe in something, but it's not actually data. It's not
I would
actually
like to point
evidence.
out though that there's two ways to look at the world, right? We could say like the world either has a God or it doesn't have a God. So that constitutes two models of reality.
You could have several gods.
Yeah. It has a God or gods, or it doesn't have a God or gods.
Yes, but it also depends on what you define
So
God.
now you accept that you accept the model that there's not necessarily a God or gods.
I don't see the evidence for any of the gods that people have talked about.
I don't see the evidence for your model.
Well, but you're talking about a model. So my point is, what is the evidence that causes you to believe something?
Okay, so part of it is that you can't rationally deny God, right? That's part of my evidence. So I'm trying to
Well, that's not evidence. That's kind of reasoning. So repeat that again.
It's part of the evidence. I said it's part.
But it's not evidence. Evidence is something that you
I
actually
said
see.
it's part of the evidence.
Okay, go on.
You can't rationally deny God, right? So we got to get there, right?
But hold on. I just did rationally deny that I believe in God because I can't say that he
But
doesn't
you said I have this criteria where I need evidence to believe something's true, right?
Yes.
You've
And then your
accepted, you've ignoring that criteria when you accept that there's this model of the world without a God. You're ignoring that criteria because you don't have evidence for that model. So I'm pointing out that you're being you're not being consistent with your criteria, right? You've accepted that there's no God without evidence.
No, I didn't say
Then
that.
you reject that there is the God model because of lack of evidence. But you've
hold on.
accepted the no God model without evidence.
Sorry, but you're not actually representing what I've said. I'm saying that there is insufficient evidence to believe in the existence of God. That's
right,
different from
and you're
saying
violating that
active
criteria when you accept a world that can exist with independence of God.
Well, I don't have any evidence that any God exists.
Exactly.
Right, but that's different
not a
from
reason.
saying I have an
That's not a reason.
active belief that God doesn't exist. Because I can't actually.
That's not a rationale. I'm trying to explain this to you.
Yeah, I know you're trying to do that.
That's a fallacy. That's called an appeal to ignorance fallacy. You're saying because there's this lack of evidence for the God model that I'm just going to accept the non-God model. But hold on, you're violating the criteria of needing evidence to believe something. You're believing this world is possible without God, but you don't have evidence for that. So I'm just trying to point out to you that your position is not rational.
Well, no, again, you keep using this rational term, and I'm not sure you know what it means.
It means a good reason to think something's true.
A good reason to think something true is not the same thing as rational.
Okay, thanks for coming. I wish you well. You're gonna freaking quibble with me over the definition of words. This is what they do.
Yo, fuck Jesus Christ. Fuck the Holy Bible. Stop
You think
following.
so?
Stop following a pedophile. Why do you follow a pedophile?
Yeah.
No, like dead ass.
You
Dead ass.
sound like a real mature, stable individual. But we could have a real great conversation with you. Oh, where do they grow these people? Welcome, John.
Hello.
Welcome. Do you accept God as your creator?
Absolutely not. You just made a statement that if you believe in this world, or you can't believe in this world without believing in a God. So you're absolutely saying that there absolutely has to be a God. So you're leaving absolutely no room for argument. Anybody that says that there's a world without a God, you're saying is absolutely wrong.
Well,
But
that's my
there's
argument.
absolutely no proof or artifactual proof of there being a God, although we have tons of artifactual proof of evolution and everything that's not mentioned in your book of God, the Bible.
But my argument is that God is necessary for proof. So you think
No, why? Where is your proof that God is necessary for proof?
yeah, it's a
You're making a statement and taking that as a true, and that's just a statement that you've made up. Where is the
not
proof?
a statement I made up.
Where is the proof then?
The proof.
What is the proof that God is needed to make something?
Yeah, God's going to be necessary for proof because to have proof, there's going to be
Stumble. Try again.
Can you stop interrupting me?
Well, just you're stumbling. Just give
I'm
you.
not- I'm not
You're
stumbling.
started this page that says God exists, but you clearly have no proof behind what your statement is. It's just your belief.
Okay, no, it's not my belief, right? Okay,
It's called faith. That's your whole
it's
thing.
not. No, I can objectively prove without a shadow of a doubt that
Go ahead.
Christianity
I'll
is
always be
true.
quiet and let you do it. Go ahead.
Wow, you're so kind. Yeah, so because God regulates and orders his creation, there's uniformity of nature and there's causality in the world.
And where is the proof that God does that?
It's in the Bible. It talks about
The Bible is a book written by man, supposedly the word of God. So where is the proof that it's truly the word of God? Where is the artifact of God? Where's the covenant? Where's
it's impossible to deny the claims of the Bible, right? Because since
bones of anybody that's in the Bible.
if you deny the claims of the Bible, you wouldn't be able to do science because only the Bible
argument.
Only the claims of the Bible can explain that there's uniformity in nature.
It's a cop-out argument to say
it's not
that
a cop-out argument. This is my argument. You're being very emotional. You're not being very rational, sir.
And back to that rational thing, the other guy was right. You don't understand exactly what rational means. You're close.
No, I don't. What do you think rational means?
You're using it in the wrong tense.
Okay, what does rational mean?
Rational can be a lot of things. Rational can be that I put my sock down on the bedroom floor and I found it there the next morning. That's a rational statement. Saying the Bible proves that there's a God is an irrational statement. And anytime someone says something against what you say, you call it irrational.
Well, I'm presenting an argument, and instead of addressing my argument, you're talking about your socks on the floor.
No, I just gave you an actual rational statement.
Sir, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're a total
What
disaster.
you're saying is if someone doesn't agree with you, then their statement is irrational. And that's just not true. It might not go along with what you say. What you need to do, you're starting on the right thing. You have every right to have your belief and believe whatever God you want. That's great. I don't have a problem with that. But you're starting a page and you're coming and trying to put out facts, and you have none.
Why do you have a problem with my? Why are you getting so emotional? Look, dude.
I'm just passionate.
Dude, stop.
Passionate when they debate.
Stop. I gave you look. You're like, oh, I can believe it. Well, dude, yeah, I believe it. And guess what? I can objectively prove it. Do you have a problem with me objectively proving Christianity is true? Do you have a problem with that?
Yes, because you haven't done it yet.
Sure, I have. The proof for God. The proof for God is that God is necessary for proof. So to deny God would be to deny proof. Due to the impossibility of the contrary, Christianity is true. There you go. That's an objective proof.
Just so you know, I was brought up Christian, and I'm baptized and confirmed, and went through the whole thing until I got old enough to think for myself and saw.
Well, I'm not
that
hearing
if
any
anything
thinking. I'm
was-
hearing emotions.
If anything, it's called passion. If
Emotions. Where's your evidence?
If anything was irrational, was the belief in God. Anything was rational was that the thought that the Bible was the word of God. Where did the first Bible come from? Do you know that?
Jesus. What's your rationale from denying God?
That's funny. So the Bible came many years after Jesus. There wasn't a Bible during Jesus.
Thanks for coming. I'm looking to
I
talk
would
to
suggest
rational
the first
people.
thing you do is read the Bible. If
I
you're going
wish you well.
to
I wish you well, sir. Looking to talk to rational people here, though. Wow. Oh, wait. I can't. Welcome, guest.
Yes, host.
What you got?
So your God must exist for there to be proof.
True.
You're not understanding that you're presenting a circular argument. So it's
not circular.
It is, because the same thing is like if I were to ask you the definition. Hang on. Same thing would be as if I asked you to give me the definition of a tree, and you used the word tree as a part of the definition. You can't use something to argue that thing. So saying that the Bible proves God exists, the Bible in itself is a part of the God argument. You can't use it to define and defend itself. You end up in a circular argument.
What's circular? So circularity is when the conclusion is in the premise, right? Is that what we're talking about?
And that's what you're doing.
No. So
if someone says,
I'm talking. I'm doing a modus.
You're getting emotional.
You're not letting me talk because you are emotional, sir.
No.
Stop. I'm making a modus ponens, right? If P, then Q. P, therefore Q. So if facts, then God. We have facts, therefore God, right? There's no circularity there, sir.
If someone says to you, show me the proof there is God, and then you say, well, God must exist in order for it to be proof, that is circular.
If facts, then God. We have facts, therefore God.
That's circular. You just went circle.
Where is the conclusion in the premise there? How is that circular?
God, proof, God. It's a circle.
The conclusion is God exists, right?
God exists.
Is God exists
is from God.
Is God exists in the premise?
I'm really sorry. There's two things going on here. Either you really don't understand what you're saying, or you're a troll who took a few philosophy classes in college, and this is how you get off. And you can make some really half-assed statements, and people believe you.
Dude, you made a claim, and you're not defending your claim.
I made a claim.
Defend the claim. If P, then Q. P,
if P, then Q, then Q, then P. It's
where's the circularity? Where's the circularity?
You can't use something to explain itself, and that's what you're doing.
No, I'm not.
When asked for proof, and you say proof doesn't exist without God, that is a circular argument.
It's not circular. It's not circular. It's not circular. Sir, stop.
Either you don't understand.
Stop. For it to be circular, the conclusion has to be in the premise. The conclusion is not in the premise. It's not circular. You're wrong.
Again, you either took a few philosophy classes and you're up here trolling people, or you really don't understand what you're talking about.
Okay, well, thanks for coming.
You're contributing.
Maybe work on how you can articulate the circularity, and then
you should go back and try and figure out yourself. What a terrible argument.
This conversation is circular because you can't explain to me how my argument's circular. And a circular definition is not the same thing as a circular, by the way.
Hello.
Anyways, that guy's lost. Welcome, guest.
So I should start off by saying that I'm agnostic, I suppose.
Okay.
So I would like to understand your argument for God.
What's that? You want to understand
your argument for God?
Yeah, so the idea is that knowledge, there's certain types of worlds that would make knowledge impossible. Like if we lived in a world where anything is possible, we couldn't know anything in that world, right? Because anytime I made a statement like a knowledge claim, because anything is possible, well, that claim could change at any time because anything's possible. There needs to be like some consistency in the world for us to have knowledge. There has to be cause and effect in the world for us to have knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things, but this is just two examples, right? And so because the Christian God regulates and orders his creation, then therefore there's the order and there's nature, uniformity in nature, and and causality exists. And since the same causes bring about the same effects, induction is possible and universal propositions can be formulated. And since universal populations are preconditions for logical deductions can be made. Okay. And so this is the type of world that's described in the Bible, where only this world can, like, we do logic, can we do science. And if you deny the claims of the Bible, your model of reality would make these things impossible. So due to the impossibility of the contrary, the claims of the Bible are necessarily true to do science, to have arguments, to do philosophy.
Okay, so technically you can't be wrong, because I mean that's my whole reason why I'm technically agnostic, and I do believe that you can have faith in God, but I mean, my main issue is that isn't there the possibility that you can have a world where, well, you said that God is sort of like this thing that moderates the logic and the reason or rationale in this world. He's the thing that sort of allows the rules of reality to exist. But why can't there be something else that allows the rules of reality to exist the way they exist right now?
Oh, well, what would it be?
I mean, I don't know.
Right. So that's the problem. So it's going to be like the Christian God, or you're going to go, I don't know. But if you say, I don't know, then there's no reason to think there's this like uniformity in the world. And then there'd be no reason to think science is accurate or philosophy is possible.
But then, I mean, I could say I don't know, but someone else could say they know. And then at that point, it's he said, she said.
No.
So
Modern philosophy
it could be the
and
Christian
science.
God, it could be the Muslim God, it could be the Greek pantheons. I'm not saying, I mean, it's,
You
I
can't
can't
say
provide
I
evidence.
don't. If you say I don't know, then reality falls apart. If you don't know ultimate reality,
I don't believe it would. So I mean, there's two distinctions to be made here. One is epistemic and one is metaphysical. So metaphysical is what we talk about when what the nature of the world itself. And epistemic is epistemology is about what we actually know. Now,
yes,
the world isn't reliant on what we know in order to exist. So we cannot know something, and the metaphysical world will go on.
If there's no, there has to be a world to know for us to know anything, right? So if we know something, then that means there's a world.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean we know about that world or everything about that world.
If we know anything,
or what makes up that world. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we would have to know what makes up that world to know anything. If you don't know what reality is, like, how is a proposition going to correspond to reality if you don't even know what reality is?
I mean, you don't need to know what.
Yes, you do.
You don't need to know what constitutes reality to know that reality exists.
You need to know what the world is, what we are, and how there can be a relationship between our minds and the world. You need to know those things.
Well, how can we know? How can we know what the nature of the world is?
If there's an ultimate personal creator God that reveals himself and facts about the world to us.
Okay, but there have been people that have claimed to known all sorts of things about the world. For example, there's this medical theory called the four humors theory. And this was a popular medical theory at its time. And basically the idea was that you needed to balance the blood from the yellow bile and the black bile, and then you just have to eat foods that sort of balance these four humors, and that's how you cure illnesses. Now we know that's not true now, but that's what people claim to have known. We find out things, and then we find out those things are not real because we didn't understand the nature of reality. So, if that's the case, then how would that? I mean, I would just say that we don't understand the nature of reality. We're still trying to understand.
Then we wouldn't know anything, because none of our sentences would correspond to reality. So
Well, our
that's
sentences
impossible.
don't always correspond to reality. They, well,
Sometimes
I would
sentences are
say they
false.
correlate,
To have,
but it's not a one-to-one mapping.
then you don't have. Then that's not. Then you're just speaking gibberish, and there's no point to talk.
Well, I mean, communication is one of the biggest issues in society. I mean, you ask managers, they'll tell you, studies have shown time and time again.
God is necessary for us to have this conversation. If you deny God, then you're just speaking gibberish, because the words you're saying wouldn't have any referent. That when you talk about kinds and patterns in the world, there'd be no referent to the categories and classes of things. So you only God can provide meaning to the classification and categorizing of our experience. If you deny that, then the classification and categorization, there's no referent, there's no meaning, there's no context. So you'd just be speaking gibberish.
Okay, but I think part of the problem is that we're starting from the proposition that God exists, but and that makes sense if we both agree that God exists. But the entire point of me being here is to
I don't think you're getting it.
offer. Well, I have to offer a counter argument as towards why God doesn't exist.
But you can't.
And you're assuming that God exists, and I can't. If you're assuming that God exists, then I can't argue with you. So you have to prove to me that God exists.
Yes. So we either assume God exists or we don't assume God exists, right?
Correct.
If we don't assume God exists, that leads to absurdity, where, like I said, we wouldn't know what reality is. And so you couldn't even speak meaningfully about the world, because you don't even know what the world is. So that means you can't speak sentences. So due to you'd be reduced to absurdity due to the impossibility of the contrary. We have to go with the God world, because only the God world can make our sentences meaningful, arguments meaningful, truth meaningful. Tell us what reality is, actually, not just our perception of it.
That part makes sense. The idea that you need something, someone, or to just mediate logic, to create logic, I can understand that part. But what I don't understand is, why does that thing have to be God? Because that's what I'm trying to get an answer for.
Because the only way we can know that type of thing is if that type of thing takes the initiative to reveal itself to us. And the denial of that revelation is impossible, because you'd be reduced to absurdity, where you would have to assume the revelation to even deny the revelation, since it's necessary to prove anything or to speak.
Okay, so let me go on a tangent here. In that case, what would happen if I had a micro society, grew up in isolation, and I taught them nothing about God? Would God still reveal themselves to that micro society? Would they able to
God
be?
is obvious and revealed to everyone, so no one has any excuse.
But what about the people before Jesus, before the Israelites?
They
before
were
the Jews?
We have progressive revelation, so they wouldn't have the revelation of Christ, but they would have revelation.
So you're saying that if I had a micro society of people, they would be able to come to God without any intervention on my part, and it would be the same God. the same religion, I would say.
I don't know what your hypothetical doesn't make sense to me, but I'm saying that
Because
like God is obvious. God is like the elephant in the room. Can't deny him.
yeah, so your
It's
argument is
obvious.
that God is an undeniable truth, and that it's something
Yes.
that you can reason a priori. So we don't need experience for God, and God is something like very obvious, almost as if you're doing math. 2 plus 2 equals
Well,
4.
we don't
Reality
reason.
exists, therefore God exists.
We don't reason to God, right? God just reveals himself to us. So revelation is just like when God gives us information or knowledge directly. So he just gives us knowledge. And so since the knowledge comes directly from the thing that actually creates truth, we know that it's true. So we have a justification to believe these things. And these beliefs are necessary to do science, to do philosophy, to have an argument, to speak. It's impossible to deny it.
I mean,
You
I
can't.
don't really see, like, this is a very circular argument. There's no way for me to debate you because your entire assumption is that God
It's not
exists.
circular.
And
What's the circularity?
I mean, if you want, we can just type this into like ChatGPT or Copilot, and then I'm not going to explain what circular means. You're the debater here.
It's,
You know.
dude, it's
So we
a
can just
modus.
ask
It's
something
modus
else.
ponens. It's not
So
circular.
you
If
mentioned
P, then Q.
modus.
Yeah.
You mentioned that earlier, but that's not how it works. So
Yeah,
explain
circularity is
I'll-
based on the content, right? It's because it's an informal fallacy. So, but the conclusion is God exists. God exists is not in the premise. The premise is that there's a necessary relationship between God and like facts or knowledge or whatever, some mental fact or some fact about our cognitive abilities. So that we just show there's a relationship. The if P then Q, if facts then God, facts therefore God. It's not circular.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily what modus ponens is. So
It is modus ponens. If P then
if
Q.
facts then God, I wouldn't say. Okay, so your argument is let's rehash. Your argument is there has to be some sort of creator being that mediates the logic in the world, and something that allows logic to actually work. And then logic exists, right? So therefore, that thing that mediates logic must exist. And you proved logic exists, therefore God must exist. Now, that's fine. That makes sense. But then what doesn't make sense is why it has to be God. And can you just tell me what your argument is for why it has to be God again? Why God and nothing else? Just so I can understand correctly.
Why God and nothing else? Because the only way we could know ultimate reality is if ultimate reality takes the initiative to reveal itself to us. So it's going to have to be like the absolute personal creator God that's described in the Bible.
And how do we know that that the ultimate reality has revealed itself to us? Because that's something I would say you can't actually prove. That in itself is very difficult to prove.
I'm proving it to you. It's a transcendental argument for God. So the Bible, God's revelation, there's an argument. The transcendental argument is in the Bible. So does that revelation constitute a model of reality or a paradigm? So the claims of the Bible represent a way to look at the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a paradigm. And we just compare that paradigm to other paradigms, and only the Christian paradigm can make sense of like truth, laws, facts. And therefore that's the correct paradigm, because that's the paradigm that like is most consistent with reality that we experience, the most coherent one. All the other paradigms make knowledge impossible at a foundational starting point level.
So you're making a probabilistic argument then?
I'm not making a probabilistic argument. I'm making a transcendental.
Well, you said you're comparing paradigms. So there are an infinite number of paradigms that could hypothetically exist.
It's not an inductive survey of every. It's not. We're not talking about hypotheticals or possibilities or guesses. We're talking about what is actual. So you have to argue from your actual position, and you're an agnostic. So you have to argue from the paradigm where we have an unknown ultimate, and that paradigm or the possibility of knowledge, because if you're in a system with an unknown ultimate, there's nothing that dictates what's possible and impossible. And so anything is possible in your system. And if anything's impossible in your system, we couldn't have an argument, because we could contradict ourselves and we could both be correct in your system. Your system can't make sense of the possibility of argumentation at all.
No, it can make sense.
No, it
And
can't.
the
I
reason
just
why it
walked
can,
you through it.
well,
What
I'll
are you
explain
talking
why.
about?
It can
I
make
just
sense because
explained to you that
I know I
you
have to, and I'm counter
cannot
arguing.
argue as an agnostic, because if ultimate reality is unknown, anything is possible. If anything is possible, we could both be correct and contradict each other. So arguments are only possible if there's an objective truth that we share, that one person's correct and one person's wrong. That's not the
Well,
case. in the world.
we both have the same. We both are in the same ultimate reality. Would you not agree with that?
Yes, that's why Christianity is
So
true.
then we both abide by the rules of logic. Then, regardless of whether I believe in it or not, we both abide by the
Not
same rules of logic.
regardless. You have to.
But you said we're in the same ultimate reality.
You have to deal with the consequences of your position. As an agnostic, you're saying ultimate reality.
I know,
is
but you haven't allowed me to
consequence.
relay my
Anything's
position.
possible.
You've assumed my position.
Consequence.
You created
You
a
can't
straw man
argue.
argument.
What's ultimate reality then?
So my point is that we exist in the same ultimate reality. You've agreed
Yeah,
to
I say
that
ultimate
point.
reality is the Christian God. What do you say it is?
I say I don't know. I
Okay,
say
so
that
now
ultimate reality
you just
is
lost the
ultimate
argument.
reality.
So that
There is no argument to be lost here.
That's a checkmate. You don't understand. Checkmate. I just checkmated you. Checkmate.
Because I
You get it?
So that means
Checkmate,
reality
bro.
is dependent on what I believe.
Bro, you got checkmated right there. When you say, I don't know, checkmate. Because now anything is possible. Now we can't argue.
Correct. Anything is possible.
Right.
And then go on.
Now there's no intelligibility. If anything's impossible, then we could both be correct and we can disagree. We can't argue now. That world doesn't make sense. You can't do science.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. But my
Right,
point
so that
is
can't be
that
true. Your position can't be true. It's impossible.
my point isn't that everything exists and doesn't exist at the same time. My point is that
That's what you're
things
arguing.
can exist. No, my point is that things can exist, but we don't know which exists or does not exist. Because to know is an epistemic question, and to what is real is a metaphysical question. I'm saying I don't know what there is to be known. But my point is that the metaphysical world, what actually exists independent of what you or me thinks. So independent of
But
what
my point
I
is,
believe,
You have
God
to be a
can
Christian.
exist, and it may not.
You have to be a Christian
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
embrace radical skepticism. Your worldview makes knowledge impossible. So if you go with that worldview, then you have to
No, it
just
makes
embrace-
knowledge possible, but the
No,
type
it
of knowledge we
doesn't.
can know is limited.
No.
So what is knowledge?
You don't.
then?
Knowledge is a a psychological state, a belief state with a justificatory path to the state of affairs in the actual world, external world.
So it's about the actual world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, that's by definition metaphysical. And so
Yes.
what actually exists. Now, we can have knowledge of the actual world, correct?
Only if you're a
I mean,
Christian. Only if you're a Christian.
Where's the logic? I don't understand that at all.
Only the world. To have knowledge of the actual world, certain things have to be true. Right?
Okay, so you're a Christian, let's assume I'm not. So if you impart a piece of knowledge on me and I adopt that knowledge, since I'm not a Christian, right? Do I have knowledge even though I have that knowledge from you? That's a contradiction in your argument just now.
I'm not arguing that you have to be a Christian to know things. I'm arguing for
You
the
just said
paradigm.
that though.
No, I didn't. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying that if atheism were true, which it's not true, if it were though, we couldn't know anything. Since we do know things,
then Christianity must be true, because knowledge is only possible if Christianity is true.
So
The fact that you know things is
so we can
evidence of
only know things
Christianity.
if we're Christian, and the only reason
That's not what I said. We can only know things. I said we can only know things if Christianity is true. If Christianity is false, that would make knowledge impossible. Since we know things, knowledge is evidence of Christianity because of the necessary relationship.
But you're assuming Christianity in this case, then.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm assuming that we know things.
Because in order to have that position, you first have to establish
All
that
I am
Christianity
assuming,
exists.
the only thing being assumed is that we know things. That's all that's being assumed. That you and me can know things. And then I'm asking the question, if we can know things.
So knowing is evidence of God then, right?
Exactly. So if we can know things, I go, what would be necessarily also, what would have to be true for it to be possible that we know things? So I work backwards. Like, think of a cake. I could go, well,
okay, so I understand. So this is an abductive argument then?
No, it's not. It's a transcendental argument. It's a specific, it's not abductive, deductive, or inductive. It's transcendental.
Transcendental as in it transcends what we can understand, or
Transcendental
as
something
else?
It's a specific argument that's distinct from deduction, induction, and abduction. It's a specific, it's its own type of argument. It's an argument that's used to prove a principle as opposed to a theorem.
I think this is, let me make the case on why this isn't an abductive. And being an abductive argument doesn't mean it's necessary. It doesn't.
Okay, I'm just going to move on if you're going to try to like teach me about my own freaking argument. Like,
well, yeah, I'm a philosophy teacher, so I would say that, yes, I actually quite am.
That's pathetic.
It's a circular argument. You can search it up on pretty much anywhere.
You don't know what you're talking about. What's the circularity? Circularity is in the conclusions in the premise?
So the part that's circular about this argument is that you're saying that God exists, that we need knowledge to know that God exists, right? Knowledge is proof of God. You said that us knowing things is proof of God.
Oh yeah,
is that not true?
Yes. Knowledge is indirect evidence of God. Yeah.
And so we have knowledge, therefore God. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So then, how do we get to that claim to begin with?
We just ask the question, like, what would have to... So there's certain types of worlds that would make knowledge impossible.
Okay. But then, if you're saying that we need knowledge to know God, and then somewhere along the line you say that God is proof that God is needed for knowledge to exist. You said that earlier, Christianity is necessary for God, and God is necessary for knowledge. So then somewhere along the line, once we go a few steps ahead, you're going to make the claim once again that we need God for knowledge. But the original point was that you need knowledge for God. So then it's circular in that case. And I can also explain why it's abductive.
It's not circular. I'm saying that God is the foundation for knowledge, right? So there's this necessary relationship. It's called a transcendental.
God is the foundation for knowledge, and we need knowledge to know God. You see, now that is actually quite circular.
Well, that's not in the argument, though.
So that's not. But you just said that's part. Then okay, that's very confusing. Then why are you saying that then?
Well, you can't deny. It's impossible to deny knowledge, right? That would be absurd, because you would have to have knowledge to deny knowledge. So knowledge is something that we can't be skeptical of. We're taking something that you can't be skeptical of, right? And we're asking, what would also have to be true for this thing to be true that we can't be skeptical of, right? You can't be skeptical of knowledge, surely.
Well, we can't be skeptical of knowledge, but we can be skeptical of the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about specific knowledge that we have. I'm talking about the possibility of knowledge at all. You can't be skeptical about that.
I understand. Okay.
You can't be skeptical about that. So then there's just this...
I'll agree with you on that one then.
So there's this mental fact can't be skeptical of, and then I'm just going, well, what also has to be true that's a non-mental fact for us to have that mental fact be true? And then it's just going to be that the claims of the Bible explain things that are necessary for knowledge, like
how it is. There's a lot. God's the absolute identity statement that would explain how there can be a law of identity, because God would impose and secure the identity of everything in the world. There's uniformity of nature because through divine providence, God ensures that there's regularities along with irregularities in the world so that we can do science. Right? There's all these things
Yeah,
that are
but I mean,
necessary.
this is a problem that has been long been tackled, even from Descartes. It's you just do the evil demon hypothesis over again, and it's like, why does it have to be God? That's the central problem here. Why does it have to be God? And the argument
Descartes'
you've offered
demon.
just doesn't make sense.
Descartes' demons is just a self-defeating paradigm. So that doesn't touch the Christian paradigm because it doesn't.
I know, but it's a similar problem that we're encountering.
No,
We have to figure this out.
You don't get it because you want to start philosophy. You want to have the human mind as your starting point, but then
I never said that.
If there's no
I would
God,
say
if we either start with the mind of God or we start with the mind of man for our reasoning. We're saying
I would say, yeah, we're forced to start with the mind of man because we obviously.
Well, we say
we're
we
human,
start with the mind
right?
of God, right? We don't say that. We say we start our reasoning starts with the mind of God. God is the ultimate. God first rationalizes the facts as opposed to the human mind first rationalizing the facts. And the problem is when you go with the human mind, Dr. Greg Bonson, he's a PhD, and he specializes in epistemology, and he's going to say that like if you have an egocentric starting point, like you start with your own mind, you end up with an egocentric predicament where like you can't defeat solipsism because you get stuck in your mind. You have to work out from your mind to the objects of knowledge in the world, and there's no unifying principle to connect your mind to the objects of the world. Well, God is the single unifying principle with causal powers that can connect our minds to the world so that we can know.
So we have to start our reasoning from the mind of God, or what?
Yes.
The mind of God.
Yes.
So we have to start from the mind of God, and then we come to the conclusion that, or the argument that, in order to know things, or that knowledge, I should say, knowledge leads to God. So starting from God, we get to God, is what you're saying.
No, we do like a thought experiment, right? So there's one system that starts with God. There's another system that starts with the mind of man. Well, if you pick the system that starts with the mind of man, you end up in radical skepticism. So only if we start with the mind of man.
But the mind of man necessarily exists because I think, therefore I am.
Sure, but that doesn't get you anywhere because there's no.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. I agree.
There'd be no metaphysical content for like the I. Like, sure, I think, therefore I am, but you couldn't even tell me what the I is. So that there's like no meaning to this. That's why.
But even in the Christian God, we can't really know what God is because God is supposed to be above us. We don't know what God is entirely.
No,
because that's above our mere means as mortals.
Yeah, we only know what God reveals to us. So we have like what we call a revelatory epistemology, where we like start with God's revelation as like our self-authenticating starting point in the system.
So here's the problem as I see it. We start out, as you say, we start from the mind of God and we have his revelations, right? But some of us believe in his revelations, some of us don't. Some of us are aware of the revelations, some of us aren't, but he's revealed it all to all of us, I would assume, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's revealed to everyone, yeah.
Then the problem is, I know I exist, but then I have to create a whole other being, which I can't prove. You say that you believe in him, but I don't necessarily believe in him. I think he may exist, or he may not exist. And that's extremely problematic because it would be much simpler to just say he doesn't exist. I have to create and put myself in the shoe of someone or something that I don't have any evidence for. And then from doing that, I then reason him. But that wouldn't make sense. That would be assuming he exists from the very get-go of the argument.
Well,
That's the idea. We all make assumptions, right? You either assume God exists or you assume he doesn't exist at the beginning, right? So
So then it's faith.
why can we it's not faith because I'm providing a proof.
Yes, there's proof, but there's proof within that specific belief system. You have to first assume that he exists.
It's an objective proof. It's not. Look, Bertrand Russell, right? He's going to say he's an atheist. He'll say that if you don't solve the problem of induction, then science is impossible, right?
Yes.
Well, Christian revelation solves the problem of induction. So
there's some caveats there, I suppose, but yeah, go on.
So revelation is going to be necessary to make like sense of how we can do science. It's not because I'm a Christian, right? I'm not just saying that because I'm a Christian. It's not my criteria.
Well, I would say, yes, Christianity does solve the problem in terms of like, it solves the epistemic problem, but just because it solves it doesn't mean that it has to be true. There's an infinite number of theories that can be true, but only one is actually true.
Because it's necessary. Induction's necessary for knowledge. We have to be able to. We all believe it. We have to have reasons for our beliefs. And if only Christians have reasons for that belief, then the Christian belief is going to be more consistent with how we live our lives. It maps onto reality better than the non-Christian beliefs.
But if it's objective, we should all be able to come to it.
Yeah, and we can.
I mean, in most cases, I would say we could come to it a priori.
A priori?
Yeah, we should be able to come to it without experience. You know, like for example, if I were to ask you to do 59 times 87, you don't know the answer to that, but you can reason it a priori. You can find the answer to that. But how do I find the answer to God? Because you said he reveals the revelations to me, but I don't know where the revelations are. How can I find these revelations?
What do you mean? It's like the Bible. It's not everything in creation exemplifies ultimate intention and ultimate design. Like you see the problem of universals, right? That we see patterns and kinds in the world, which particular instantiations are created of. There's classes and categories.
Yeah, so there's a logic to the world, right? Okay.
So the natural world. There's no. Without God, there would be no referent for universals. So when we talk about classes and categories of our experience, it wouldn't have any meaning or referent without God, right? So God's going to be necessary.
All the categories and all the categories for everything that exists, these are man-made categories. I can have a category of table, but like,
do you believe universals? Do universals exist?
What do you mean by universals?
Thank you for coming. You're such a liar. You're not
I'm just asking for clarification because we want to talk about the same thing.
Oh, you're a philosophy teacher?
Good faith.
What do I mean by universals? The most basic thing in philosophy?
Okay, by universal, you mean things that I would say apply to everything. So
classes and categories of things. You're not a philosophy teacher, are you? You're a liar.
Classes of...
You lied, didn't you? Just admit it. Bro.
But even if... Okay.
You're not lying to me? Are you kidding me? You didn't know?
I promise you, I've been trying to be entirely good faith this entire time.
Do universals exist?
Trying to have a very civil... Yes. And I would say...
How do you explain their existence without God?
You can have universals that exist without God. Because
How?
Okay, so I would say... Let me explain the logic. So there's another argument for, I'm going to go into a possible argument. One argument is that the universe exists, but it exists logically from the beginning of time, as opposed to created by something. So the argument is that time cannot be created, because that would be a contradiction. In order for time to be created, that would necessitate a beginning. And in order for there to be a beginning, that would mean that there had to be some point at which some things were different. But if things were different, But if things were different, they would need a point in time in which
You
they
lied
change.
about being a
But time has
philosophy
not
teacher.
been existed yet.
You lied, didn't you? Just admit you lied. You lied about being a philosophy teacher.
I did not lie. It's irrelevant.
How do
but I
universals
did not lie.
exist? How do universals exist?
I cannot explain how they exist.
Okay, so is God necessary?
I don't have a convincing argument for if they exist or why they exist.
God's going to be necessary to explain the universe, correct?
It's a possible theory as towards why they can exist, but it's not necessary.
Really?
You could argue that there are no universals, that everything is just a particular instant of whatever.
But that would be a contradiction, wouldn't it? So why are you doing this sophistry, Mr. Philosophy Teacher?
I would say that your theory of why God exists is circular. It makes sense. It makes sense at a certain.
I just can't. Like that guy is. I can't. I can't do it anymore. I might have to go. Oh man, I threw my back out. Give me a second. Yeah, I gotta go anyways. I think that guy was lying to me like the whole time. I'm pretty sure. So he said like, oh, you can be a nominalist, right? Well, no, you can't be a nominalist. Anyways, atheists, I wish you well. Christians, God bless.